Anything interesting going on with you, Andrew?
Well, like what I wanted to ask, like I didn't attend that particular session that you guys had, but I listened to it. It was about during Guru Purnima, is it called?
Good,
Uh,
I think.
yeah,
Or,
if you ask a favor of the master, I mean, it's a very propitious time. Uh, and you said Ramakant Maharaj had said it's a very propitious time in the um, in the dream, basically, in the
yeah,
illusion.
exactly.
And I guess the question I have is righteous anger within the dream. With the shootings this week, I know El Paso very well. I had worked there for years. Excuse me. And I know, I know the kind of people that they are and so forth. So with the shootings in El Paso, uh, it's just really, there's a certain kind of anger that I feel. And I know in scripture they talk about righteous anger. Um, it's all within the illusion, but nevertheless, it's a part of the illusion. And also, I think that, at one level, one is completely above it and one can witness that anger. Um, but at another level, one can really feel it as well. And, when I had read Das Bode, I mean, he talked a lot about living the life within the dream, like how to behave, how not to behave, who to follow, who not to, basically, if you read the book, of course, which you all did, you know what I'm speaking about. Basically, I mean, he really talks about how to live your life uh, within the dream. So I'd like to just ask you about that idea of righteous anger. I know Maharaj speaks about getting beyond the whole phenomena of anger and any identification with the dream or with the world. Um, but anyways, that's one question I had, if you want to speak about that.
I mean, anger is just an emotion that's coming and going. I understand what you're saying. I didn't watch the news, but I did hear that there were two shootings last week, and they had the flags down at half mast and such. And this is a very sad event. And like Maharaj would say, just like your body relations, when things are going on through that, you're going to feel something. And within the bubble of illusion, these things are happening. These things are occurring. You don't have to take the pressure so much, but if you're upset about the course of what's going on or this and that, then I think that's totally normal. I don't think that you should be suppressing it. I think, if there's an emotion and a feeling, I wouldn't act on anything or try to do this, and maybe in a time for mantra to kind of ease this so that pressure doesn't keep building and then pressurize you into, I am having these feelings, what can be done about it? I'm feeling hopeless or helpless or any of these things, rather than just, okay, this is coming and I'm acknowledging that it's here. There's a disturbance in the five elements for sure. And I'm feeling this pressure. So I remain with mantra and just allow this, because it's going to pass. Everything's going to pass.
Oh, yeah,
To
yeah.
have compassion for your fellow human being, as in Das Bode, this is a very high thing because you're treating everyone as this, oh,
Oh,
we may lose electricity. You're treating everyone as selfless self. And so there's automatic kind of compassion. This is your own self. And yet this is your own self, and some things are not going so nice, and some things are going really out of control. But you're just remaining with your selfless self and not taking so much. Just like we talked about, if a relative dies, in the absolute sense, you know that nothing's actually happened. But in the relative sense of this is a relative, a body-based relation, of course, but nonetheless, I think I spoke about when Maharaj left the body, I texted the people in the ashram and I was like, on one hand, I know Maharaj has gotten us to this point where, okay, Nothing has actually happened. The presence in the body has just joined the presence that is the totality. But from my own personal sense of self, not only was he master, but he was like father too. You know, he had a lot of, he took really great care of me in the ashram with the medicines and fathering me, you know. In reality, he guided in both a father and mother way. It talks about that in Das Bodh as well, that the guru is father and mother, and is exposing this new kind of, whatever you want to call it, this reality that's been covered for so long. Oh yeah, it's actually thundering. Sorry. I'm hearing it off, and then the lights flicker here. So if we get cut off, then I will try to. But
Okay.
this is, you know, I don't think that you can say I shouldn't be feeling this, because then of course you're creating more of a pressure of I am someone who's not supposed to be feeling something, rather than just letting everything come and go, experiencing it in the moment and letting it go. If it becomes too much, mantra.
That, you know, that's sort of, there is like a rise, you know, like what's happening in our culture today, you know, there are more mass shootings than there are days in the year, this new year. There's, and there was another one today. So that's 251 or 52 mass shootings, and there hasn't been that many days in this year. So there's something, you know, like basically, I know this is all within the bubble of illusion, but, you know, like, I know one time I read actually, of course I didn't hear him, but Nisargadatta Maharaj says, you never know, you may find me on the street protesting.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. You know, and he said I may get killed protesting on the street.
Yeah, because you're not a doer of action anymore. You know that consciousness is just moving this body form. This formless sense of presence is moving the body form. And in the moment, there's reactions and there's responses. And like Nisargadatta Maharaj says, you may be out protesting in the street. You may get killed protesting in the street. And during Ramana Maharshi's time, too, that was during the time where World War II was going on, you know, and Siddharameshwar Maharaj was during like World War I. These were really terrible world events, and especially for that time. We hadn't seen like mass shootings in malls and all this kind of stuff. And here there was this power that was going and just conquering the world and enslaving the world. And so that was a very kind of troubling thing. But both Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj were, this is occurring, but know yourself, and this will ease this pain that you're feeling about the pain that's going on in the world. The world's pain becomes your own pain because the world is a projection of your spontaneous presence. Everything that's occurring is coming from you. But identify this you as not the limited body form, but as the existence itself that is stirring the movement, the primal illusion.
Yeah, I remember something that Ramana Maharshi said to Papaji. Papaji said, you know, there was a terrible conflict going on the border of India and Pakistan. And the Hindus were getting killed by the Muslims. And Ramana, apparently Papaji said, well, it's all illusion, you know. And Ramana said, go save your family. And he was able to do that through some grace. They didn't get the car on the train that he was on. So he did save his family. And Ramana had said, go ahead and do it, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he said something like that. Why are you sitting here? He said something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ramana told him, go and save your family.
You yourself having the human experience it fully. Enjoy this experience of all the experiences, good and bad, so to speak, but knowing that you're the formlessness in which all of this form And this experience is occurring, and you, the selfless self, are not experiencing anything. There's no experience, no experiencer. You're using an instrument in the bubble of illusion to experience the occurrences that are happening within the bubble of illusion.
It works both ways. Sometimes, like you, Lee, sometimes I see it from the big perspective, basically, just sort of like a witness of this whole thing. And there are really no bad feelings. But then, there are certain times when you do feel that sort of emotion about what is actually, like what's taking place within this circle of illusion. And so basically it's, that helps not to get trapped in it. But at the same time, there's just, the reason why, I was just thinking about scripture, and I don't know what particular passage it's in, but the idea of righteous anger, just there's an anger which is really not, you might say, really not proper, or I don't know what the word would be, but basically there is such a thing as a righteous anger about certain events and so forth. But but when I look at Ramana Maharshi, I don't know if he ever got angry. I listened to a video once about him called Yanni, and it was very good presentation. And apparently he did get angry with certain people, like you would never think that he did, but he actually did, from what the video tells about, the way he was during his life. Maybe it was selfless self acting through him to really put someone in his place or whatever. But, that kind of anger maybe is righteous. And also I remember one time Ranjit Maharaj got very angry with a person, and I was in a train, we were in Mumbai, and I was riding with this friend of mine who was much more, he knew much more about this than I did. He had been at this for many years, and I had just come on board. I had no idea what was going on. And I said, God, he got angry and so forth. I said, what, what's the difference? He said, well, he does it. There's no ego in it.
Exactly. It's just a rising wave in the ocean.
Yeah.
Or the pond that's completely still, and then a rock gets thrown in it and ripples are occurring, but then the ripples fade away. There's no ego in it. Like Arjuna on the battlefield, go and fight. And no one's dying, but still fight. Just don't sit there and say, oh, how great a warrior I am, or, oh, I'm going to kill these specific guys, or get totally involved and take the pride of doership. Just allow the spontaneous happenings to happen. They're going to anyway. And just you see these things, if anger is coming, or sadness is coming, or this is coming, there's no like trying to hide from any emotions. Emotions can come and go because and Maharaj talks about all the time, some depression is coming, or some sadness, and it just comes and goes. There's not a story created behind it of why this is here. It's just coming and going. It's the same as the sky. Behind the sky right now, even as it's getting all cloudy and lightninging and thundering and doing all this stuff, and wind is blowing, there's clear sky beneath all the layers of this weather. So that's from the place of your stillness, your only seeing presence, and all of these things are layers on your presence. And they can be there or not be there. It does not affect you. And even the righteous anger, like you said, well, Jesus was a good example when he smashed all the tables and kicked the money changers out of the temple. He was angry, very angry, that what have you done to my father's temple? That you've got guys in here, changing money and selling stuff. This is not right. And there was a burst. Of course, he had to have some kind of anger if he's flipping tables and kicking people out of the temple.
Actually, most scripture scholars say that was the act that really kind of turned everything against him. Basically, the scribes and Sadducees and so forth. That particular act was really what actually was going to culminate in his crucifixion eventually. That whole kind of display.
Absolutely, because he's standing up for God. You know, he's not looking at it as the worldly things of you're having money and all this kind. He's looking at it from, this is a huge offense to have this going on. And there was a spontaneous action of, no, this I will not stand for. But I'm quite sure, too, that it was all based on a spontaneous response in the moment to what was occurring. And if I continue to think of myself as an individual doing things, or that I have the individual autonomy to do things separate apart from the presence that's actually moving the body, then the egoistic sense will start to take credit and pride of doership and pride of action, and then results will be on my head. It says, Sri Siddharmeshwar Maharaj says in Master of Self-Realization, if you're willing to take the credit for the bad or the things, oh, I did this bad thing, then you're putting that on your head. It's not needed because it's only a sense of pride and doership. And this pride and doership, if it's there, then you have to, just like Siddharmeshwar Maharaj says, if you believe you're with form, then you need to worship God with form. When you know yourself as formless, then you'll worship God formlessly. But not a lot of time can you start out worshiping a formless God, formless presence. Brahman, Atman, Paramatman, God, Master, that you are, you cannot just start out worshiping it formlessly. You'd have to have some puja or some ritual or something in the beginning so that you can have this accustomation of, if that's a word, I don't know, of bowing to the masters and such. Because if you just sit there and say, oh, formless presence, and this is how I worship God or whatever, like Siddharmeshwar Maharaj says, if you believe you're a body in a form, then you worship in a form. And that's why you worship the Guru, the sense of presence as a body form of the Guru, Sri Ramakant Maharaj, Sri Siddharmeshwar Maharaj, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, Sri Ranjit Maharaj, in the form. You're worshiping the Guru, which is really the formless presence, but because you're believing yourself to be a body, you have to worship another body form, another form.
There is, like another scripture phrase or sentence is, faith without works is useless. So, but the works would be spontaneous works. I mean, like Jesus himself said, don't worry about what you're going to say. The Spirit will give you the words to say in that moment.
Absolutely.
Probably when he drove the salesman in the temple out, it was precisely that. Just spontaneous Spirit speaking through him, in that moment. So, like faith without works, I mean, the problem with that is that, that's a phrase that can be very misleading because people begin to take a burden on themselves. And, they think, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, But actually, it's when there's true faith, I guess, basically you will work spontaneously. The actions will happen more spontaneously. I know, like faith in the Master, total faith in the Master is really, I think it's one of the essentials. I mean, I know Ranjit said, if you don't have absolute, complete faith in the Master, you will not get rid of the ego or that somebody or someone that's there. You just won't do it.
Correct. And it's in the next moment. It's when you say faith without works is dead. That's like Nisargadatta Maharaj talks about chewing on the knowledge and expressing it in your daily life. Like Siddharmeshwar Maharaj says, I have laid all this out for you. Now do this. Don't be like the person who says, oh, there's sewage. Don't open the hatch to the sewage. Don't be like that. Don't look just to see. You know this now. Now put this into practice. All the things that you have been shown, all the things that Master has shown, faith without works is dead, because that would be when Maharaj talks about dry discussion. You can sit there and talk about the Brahman, Atman, Paramatman, Master, and presence, and mantra, and all this sort of stuff, but if you're not actually spending time with you and being with you, then it's totally useless. And that's faith without works is dead. If you don't, Maharaj has said, take this mantra, sit with your own self, sit with the mantra, use the mantra with the breath. Then every day, all the time, try to have this mantra. So if he tells you this, and you say, yes, mantra, I believe that Nisargadatta Maharaj received this mantra from Siddharameshwar Maharaj. And now Nisargadatta Maharaj has passed it on to Ramakant Maharaj, who passed it on to me. And you say, I believe absolutely that this is the, as Master has said, this is the recipe for self-realization. It's guaranteed. But you don't do the practice. You don't sit and spend time with you. You don't sit and investigate your inner world and start to understand that I am not body, I am not mind. I'm observing these thoughts. And now this presence, I can start to sit there and move about in the world without experiencing anything because my mind is busy with mantra. Therefore, no experience, no experiencer, and I begin to see the fruits of Master's teaching. But I can only do that if I put it into practice. And then I realize of myself I'm nothing, the Father doeth the works, in that that presence is moving everything around. I see this, like I'm sitting there with mantra, and yet things are occurring and there's no experience being impressed. There's no thought process of what I'm doing or even taking ownership of doership.
In that case, you're being an instrument.
Exactly. That's why, we talk about religion. St. Francis says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. And then he talks about the impressions that he may have with him that he would like to release. And then he talks about it is in dying that one awakens to eternal life. It's been dying to the sense of this conflict of, here's this and here's this, these two opposites, and my struggle internally to try to be, quote, good. No, I can't be good. Like Jesus says, only God is good. So surrender all to that. Surrender all to that presence that you are. It's very simple. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. I want to be a vessel, an empty vessel in which presence may do what it's going to do without this egoistic sense of doership.
And it's like the mantra is a hollowing out vehicle that makes the instrument ready to transmit the the divine instrument, because if it's crowded with a lot of beliefs and other things, then it isn't it isn't hollowed out. So
the mantra erases all the illusory, basically how Maharaj talks about the fire and the ash. The ash is covering the fire. The mantra removes the ash so the fire can burn bright. The fire is you and God cannot live in that body. You actually don't live there, but you have this, as Siddharameshwar Maharaj talks about, the Gomiji Gesh guy who just puts his stamp on everything and nobody questions it. This I that you believe is you is living in the form as the presence is, but it's like an extra add-on that's not needed. It's a crowding house. And again, presence. Look, just observing presence. Without any senses, it's just the feeling. Just I, without anything. And you're observing this and you know I'm not body. I'm more subtle than the space in the room.
It brings to mind, there are two Christian books, sort of like old books, classics. One is the Practice of the Presence of God, written by a fellow who was a cook. I think he was in a monastery. And the other one is Abandonment to Divine Providence. That was another one that's very, very, very much that surrender, complete surrender to to the present. Just really two powerful little books.
Yes.
I read those years and years ago, but basically they're saying the same thing, actually.
Well, imitation of Christ. Because when I came back from India, I was sort of curious about, okay, because the people that I'm around are mostly identifying as the Christian faith, but I didn't know how a Christian could actually go through and really get to know yourself without all the dogma and all the layers of illusion. And this book, Imitation of Christ, came about, and it was very powerful. I'm sure you've read it, but it was very powerful in that it talks about get rid of the sense of doership, and it's all the master, all God, nothing for you. And it kind of boils down like the Advaita, basically, into this Christian format. You said you had read The Imitation of Christ? I'm sure, yes.
Years ago, when I entered the novitiate, they gave us a copy. Everyone got a copy of it. And at that age, we kind of like almost laughed at it only because we didn't understand it. I mean, I didn't actually laugh at it. I thought it was very good. But I know that, I remember one of the novices came along and said, God, every time you go out of the house, you come back less a man. I mean, like, what? So things like that. But no, it's some of his ideas about love and so forth, as far as I can remember, that was so many years ago that I didn't read the whole book, actually. But they gave us a copy of that with the Bible. They gave us each a copy of the Bible and the Imitations of Christ. So, but, really, that was way beyond where most of us really were at the time. And, basically, all of it is so true. Now, with some perspective and age and so forth, you can just look back and say, gee, you couldn't, I don't know how you can actually see it if you're not ready to see it, actually. But, yeah.
Well, and see, and once the spontaneous conviction is there, then you're reading the reader, no matter what the religion, no matter what the book, no matter what it is, you see what was the meaning. And even the Bible, I just had a discussion with a friend of mine who was Christian, and we were talking about the Bible, and I said, and one of the things that the Bible takes is that Jesus, because I believe I'm a person, and I'm listening to this Jesus Christ speaking, I immediately assume that it's a person speaking, and that person is speaking to me, and that person has so much knowledge and so much wisdom and all of this, rather than the understanding that what Jesus was saying was from the standpoint, like Nisargadatta Maharaj says. When Nisargadatta Maharaj says, I is the consciousness, I is everything. There is no I as Nisargadatta talking to you. It's consciousness speaking to consciousness without these bothersome body forms. And when Jesus talks about, I am the way and the life and the truth, I am, but not I, Jesus, the presence that's speaking in the form of Jesus that is before you, the formlessness in the form, is saying this. And this is like, and then of course people, they write down what they hear. Even from Ramakant Maharaj, you see many people, they write down what they heard. And Maharaj has said, that's why it's very important to take the transcripts and, exactly what was said, basically. He was always into, let's get this, this recording, let's get it down on the paper, so that you can't change the words around and just put in your own kind of, like Nisargadatta Maharaj talked about Maurice Friedman. Nothing against him, but that the fact that he impressed some of his own ideas, because he's still having whatever I'm hearing, I'm filtering through a body-mind mechanism and trying to kind of make sense of what is said. So I'm hearing from the level of understanding, and I'm not actually hearing what's being said. That's why recognition and the projection is the most important part. Presence, recognizing presence, recognizing listener and speaker are one and the same. Mind is kind of in abeyance for a while because presence is just communicating and flowing. The presence, recognition in the projection, continuous flow of presence. And the recognition, speaker and listener are one and the same.
Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Yep.
Maybe I should close the window. Is this coming up?
Might be a good idea.
So that's thunder, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was thundering and lightning here. Now it stopped with the lights, so I think maybe it passed through, but it was pretty heavy there for.
Sounds like something growling through
A poltergeist.
Indeed.
Yeah, Mother Nature isn't happy.
Indeed.
She didn't like the Trump speech.
We're talking about the say Christ and the money changers, and as a spontaneous action, I think of that possibly as like a fearless act of love, and then that made me think of in AA they used to teach about tough love.
I mean, the whole idea of Jesus' life is that he was seeing where it was progressing to, and he allowed everything because that's what you're supposed to do in your daily life. If you want to live the life of Christ or whomever in this way, or live the life as Sri Ramakant Maharaj has said to live it, or Buddha, or any of these, you live the life as they led it, and not just like, do this, but literally like the whole story is, not my will, but yours be done, all the way up to and including nailing me on a cross. That's a complete removal of the sense of doership, or removal of the separate egoistic I.
That's why in AA they used to teach action over thinking about, over analysis. They would say paralysis of analysis. Just act.
Faith without works is dead. Always, whatever you're doing, and Nisargadatta Maharaj has said, whatever you've understood today, put it into practice immediately. He would tell the people that came to see him, don't just come and sit and listen and shake your head and, oh, yes, this is very nice and all this kind of, no, put it into practice immediately. The next person that's giving you troubles, know that that's your own self. The presence in your self and the presence in that self is the same self. It's one presence. It cannot be anything other, because this presence, and once you just continuously kind of keep your eyes on the prize of presence, then there's not a feeling of separation. There can't be, because there's not a you. If there's no you, there can't be other. That's an automatic given. So if there's no you here, then there's just players in the scene, and you're not taking any kind of I have to act this way or do this, or I have to have these goals met or anything like that, other than your daily tasks. You do your job, do your duties, but it's all spontaneous in the moment, and it's just a very nice, pick up the water and put it down. It's the same. Wow, that was big thunder.
I turned off, I closed the window and everything, so coming through. The totality is expressing itself.
One of the things that I, if I do that, something that I consider to be wrong, I still feel the touch of that. You know, I know that, for instance, like Nisargadatta Maharaj would actually, you know, like he would throw people out of his room, you know, because, you know, I mean, people have told me that actually. And I've seen Papaji do the same thing. For instance, like he would just, you know, smash into it. I mean, like, I think I shared with you guys once about the, you know, the Israeli freedom fighter who was there, and Papaji just really led into him. The guy kind of like spun around. It was so, the power of Papaji was so strong, and the guy was just really taken totally off his feet, kind of. And he just continues on like nothing's ever happened, you know, like I remember Papaji. And also the same thing with Nisargadatta, he just carries on like nothing has even happened, you know. I myself, however, you know, like if I do something that I think is wrong, if I shout at someone or get angry or whatever, then I feel like I carry that around a little bit, you know. It's like, and from what I hear, you know, what the teaching is saying basically is that you're not the doer. It's kind of like what's happening. And yet, you know, like from what I've been told by, you know, the masters, like, you know, as you progress, there's less anger and less so forth and so forth and so forth, you know, all the sort of like the cardinal sins or whatever, you know, those things just kind of like evaporate. But nevertheless, when I do sort of respond in, you know, like a way that I consider to be wrong or bad, I do carry that, you know, like maybe not as long as I would. And it will evaporate, as you said, you know, it's like bad weather. It'll come and it'll go. But nevertheless, in the moment itself, I do, I take the touch of it. And I guess the question I have is there ever a time when you absolutely don't even take the touch of no matter what? In other words, like some of these masters, like maybe Nisargadatta, didn't take the touch, just boom, you know, just carries right on, you know. Just
I mean, it depends, and it totally depends. If, you know, one of the things, and as I was coming up, as Keith was mentioning AA experience, there's a thing called a 10th step where when I'm wrong, I promptly admit it. I don't carry it with me. I don't think about it or mill it over. But if I snap at you or I do something, I'll say, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. This is in the day-to-day. Like Maharaj would say, your routine life. It's not it doesn't have anything to do with anything. You can be with you always, respond in the moment, and then be like, oh, that was wrong. I'm sorry. Because naturally, if you're sitting there thinking about that you were wrong and you don't take any action about it, then that's a mentation. But and Nisargadatta Maharaj, if he said, oh, you get out, I don't want to talk about you, or whatever, or Papaji says, listen, enough of you, go. That may not have been anything wrong. You know, there wasn't actually any like wrongdoing, so to speak, so you move right on. If something is happening and you say, hey, don't do that, that's just a simple, spontaneous action in the moment, a response. But it's when you've done something like, if you know, at work all the time, there's instances where you're probably fast-paced, you may make a mistake or do something, and you just say, at work all the time, if my boss says, oh, did this, and this, did you do that? Oh, yes, I did. I take ownership of this thing that I have done. And yet that is at the, like, up here level. That's the surface waves. And I take ownership of what has happened and say, yes, I did this and it was wrong, sorry. And, or, you know, or not just sorry, sometimes you have to actually fix your issue. But the spontaneity is not affected because it's a response in the moment. As far as anger goes, I don't, when there's no you, there's nothing really that you're going to be angry about. But just like Maharaj all the time, he puts his hands like this, or he does like this. I like this very much because it's like, okay, whatever you're doing, okay. And that's his kind of response to not taking the touch. You may have done something really like And he's just like, okay, you know, this is good. Thank you. And that's the kind of attitude that you can start to impress in everything in your everyday life, because then you're remaining, as the master's teaching, you're remaining with yourself as self. You're not allowing yourself to be drugged along behind the horses of anger or greed or despair or worry. It's just coming and going.
One time, Ranjit told me that you have to show the gun sometimes. And maybe it was just speaking directly to me, because I'm the type of person who I don't like to do those sorts of things. But when I was in India, some of the hotel people broke into my room and stole my rupees.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, like, I wasn't going to say anything about it. You know, I just was going to let it go. And, you know, when Ranjit heard about it, he demanded that I go to the police station and file a report. And so I went to the police station and filed a report. Then a whole thing developed around this, because it was the Mumbai Mafia that ran this whole chain of hotels. And so I had to go back to the police station, and the police apprehended the fellow who was at the desk who stole the money, and they kind of like beat him. And, you know, I had to go back there and defend my case. And Ranjit sent this fella, Chandra Kant, with me to kind of like help me, because I didn't, you know, like the language was really kind of like really above my head in terms of they're quickly speaking in Marathi, you know, and so forth. And so in the police station, you know, and, you know, all of these huge guys come in, you know, from, you know, like the hotel owners, bodyguards, or, you know, like just real tough guys. And they're standing there and they're looking at us with this incredible stare of cold hatred, or just you're done for kind of look. And
Oh my gosh.
it was just really something. And so, you know, like we were stumbling through this. And then when Chandra Kant and I walked outside, some of these guys followed us, and Chandra Kant said, "Run." So we were running through the streets of Mumbai, and I remember he had these plastic white shoes, Chandra Kant. And that's all I could see running through the streets was these white shoes, and I just followed him.
Wow.
And I don't know if the guys came after us or not, but man, you know, they said those guys could really just do you in, you know, if they really wanted anyway. But it was a whole commotion about that little thing I have in my rupees stolen. But it's like Ranjit pushed me into it. You know, he said, you know, he demanded that I go to the police office and file a report and so forth. And then I go back and fight my case and so forth and so forth. And he said, sometimes you got to show the gun, you know. You don't use it, but sometimes you got to show the gun. And anyway, you know, like, so that basically, it's about the whole thing about tough love, you know, like you have to, like you said, Keith, you know, like maybe you do have to get angry and really put someone in their place or whatever, because it's, again, if you do it without ego, without being the doer, that makes the whole difference in the world. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. But, you know, so this whole conversation, you know, like we're having, as I said, you know, I do take the touch when I do something that I perceive to be wrong, and I do apologize, but I do, in the moment, I feel like I'm taking a touch. That's what I'm trying to say. And I guess my question is there every day that comes when you really do everything so spontaneously that you're never there to do it, and therefore you never take the touch. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. There doesn't come a day when you're just never there anymore, and so whatever happens, whether it appears to be like what, you know, something you say is good or bad, it's simply happening, and there's no rhyme or thought about it. Basically, no consideration about it. There's no taking of the touch. In other words, you know, so.
Well, no taking of the touch is different, because taking the touch is that it's impressed as a thought that this is occurring and this is But a spontaneous action is, and again, a lot of times, like what you talked about with the rupees thing, in a circumstance like that, I would sit there and some kind of something is happening. Many times I'll say, Master, I need guidance on this. I don't think that's wrong at all. I turn to the Master. Many times I will sit in front of the poster of Maharaj and just sit there. Like if I've had some kind of something and something's occurring, it's not occurring at the highest, deepest level. But for me to have that selfless self dialogue and kind of get out of whatever is happening in the moment, this is beautiful, actually, that I'm sitting and saying, okay, Master, this is what to do. And sit, and then the answers come. If you're in the mode of dialoguing with yourself, the self, because even though it's just a poster, it's the same. It's self to self speaking to itself. But there are times where you just say, "Oh, Master, I don't know what to do. What to do in this, Master? What to do? Nothing's happening. I understand that, but what to do? Oh, this is." It could be all kinds of little things, and sometimes it's things that appear suddenly, and you don't want to take the touch, so immediately, okay, Master, what to do? Or, okay, this is happening. I push aside. Mantra, start the mantra. Okay, sit, mantra. I can't think of any specific things right now, but there are many things throughout the week that something is there, and immediately it's turning to, okay, Master, you said this, or okay, Master, or just sitting there sometimes, just like using body form to kind of intensify the sense of presence because you're feeling body and presence both. Whereas normally you're just walking around, your eyes are basically space, seeing everything. There's no kind of activity going behind. But if for some reason there's something and it's there, and I can sometimes just use body, like in this moment right now, and okay, just start to sense, and then intensify the sense of presence, because I'm no longer one with a sense of presence. I've created a state of duality using the body form to experience the presence rather than just remaining as the presence.
Right, yeah.
And you can do that any time.
Have you ever felt like if you do something wrong, or have you ever felt ashamed of yourself and you don't feel like you're, I don't know, the momentum of the mantra loses its effect in a sense because you feel like you've failed at what,
No.
Like again, that's kind of like what I mean by taking
of doership. That's pride of doership.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah.
In mantra, you're basically clearing, you had your door open and some leaves got in and you're brushing those leaves away. But you're not sitting there and saying, oh, I can't believe I left the door open and leaves got into and made my floor dirty. No, just in the moment I'm using mantra and sweeping the leaves. I don't have any kind of sense of, and you don't in reality when you're not using mind, you have no sense of, this is a terrible thing. Why do I do such terrible things or anything like that? No, this is not, no. It's again, even the wrong act is you pick up the bottle, you put it back down, and apologizing for the wrong act. You pick up the bottle, you put it down, and it's finished.
Right, yeah. Just so you know that, so when I eventually went back to India again, after the satsang with Ranjit, Nalin, who was the kind of like the closest disciple of Ranjit, after the satsang session, he said, here's your money. So Ranjit knew a lot of the people involved in the police department in Mumbai. So I don't know how, but they finally got the money back that was stolen from me. I mean, I just say, oh, thank you.
And that too is, are you going to follow Master's instruction?
Yeah.
Especially knowing that here's the mafia, right? You have to battle this mafia, but Master has said, do this. And whenever Master has given any kind of command, so to speak, you're automatically protected. Because you understand that that's Sadhguru who's arranging everything specifically, as we talked about last week, about a test. I think Siddharmeshwar Maharaj talked about telling a disciple to go out and feed the grass to the horse. And he only saw a dog. But he said, my master has said to feed this grass to this horse. And he fed the dog the grass as a horse, because master cannot be wrong. It's only my wrong thinking about myself that makes anything right or wrong. Ranjit said, I want you to go back. I want you to press charges. I want you to do this and that. Sadhguru speaking says, Andrew, do you trust? Faith without works is dead. It may seem like a menial thing, and there may be a little bit of upset, and running away from mob guys is never fun, but you trusted. You had complete faith and trust in the master.
I know Ranjit said once that when he was very young, he was sent to, I think, Rishikesh by Siddharameshwara Maharaj, and he got diarrhea so bad he was going to the bathroom like 150 times a day. And it was horrible. So he wrote a letter saying that he just had to come back to Mumbai or Bombay in those days. And he said, as he was going to drop the letter in the post at the post office, he said he thought about what Siddharameshwara Maharaj had said, and he said, "You're not the body." And basically, if the body goes, it goes. And basically, he just decided not to mail the letter, and he decided to stay there. And he said, had he left, he probably would have died. But he didn't, so he stayed there. But basically, it was like a real test for him in terms of the, the diarrhea that was so severe that was just, really demoralizing. He was just a kid, actually, because he met him when he was very young, actually, Siddharameshwara Maharaj. So, it was just really, again, it's just like you're saying, it's just that whole test of what can happen when the master puts you to it, and so just hanging in there, keeping the faith is really important.
Yes. When the food poisoning from my own self in India, I told you that couple of days before that, I had these Rudraksh beads on. And at that time, I thought that the beads were kind of a magnification of this sense of presence, that God was very pleased in whatever way I felt this sense of presence with these beads. But then after taking mantra, I took the beads off. I had gone to the same restaurant with beads, didn't get sick, ate the same thing. Took the beads off after mantra, went back to the restaurant, got horrible food poisoning. And I remember telling Maharaj, if I put these beads back on, it's over. Because I'm attached to the material world. I have to always have a crutch. And he said, yes, this is very good. Just keep with yourself and stuff. And yeah, it was horrible. Running to the bathroom constantly, finally Maharaj taken to the hospital. But the whole idea was a test. And I had told, what was his name? Oh, I forget. But anyway, he was a devotee who came around the same time I did. And he wound up leaving like a week after, or a couple of days after I had left. But I was talking to him and saying everything, because he was talking about the mosquitoes and all the heat and all this. And I said, everything here is like a microcosm that Master is creating only for you to have complete faith and trust, to release all your old ideas, to release your ideas about mosquitoes and attention to mosquitoes and attention to heat and attention to the food or anything like this. Just be here. Be with your selfless self. Allow all these things to come and go. Even the food. You see the food, experience the food without the mind telling you that you've had this food before. Experience the food now, in the moment, without anything. Just spontaneously eat the food without thinking about the food. Without thinking, I didn't like this last time I ate it, or last week we had this, or anything like this. Just everything was the test. Faith without works is dead. And everything, every minute of every day, Maharaj is basically standing behind you, hoping that you'll remain with your selfless self, because this thing that seems to be something is nothing.
Right, yeah.
Oh, it's 8:17, yes? Everybody's good.
Okay. Good luck with the weather, you guys.
Thank you. Oh, the weather seems to have passed, at least it passed here.
Yeah, I think it's past here, too.
It just thundered and didn't do anything else.
Yeah, it stopped making all that noise, so I guess it's it's finished whatever it was doing.
Pick up the water, drink, put it back down.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.